So I'm playing Abe's Odyssey again, and I think we might have discussed a little bit of this on a bonus episode, Tim, when we
Yeah,
were
we
talking about
definitely. I
games.
feel like, yeah, there was some Abe's Odyssey discussion a while
Definitely.
back. Yeah,
Has to
definitely
be.
was.
Because it is just the most perfect anti-capitalist game of all time. For those of you that haven't played it, it's a game that came out in 1997.
Mm.
You are basically a little cool. You're just like a native dude in the world that is this universe takes place in, and you're a slave along with all the other native people.
Is it
And
Madokans, right?
yeah,
Madokans?
Madokans they're
Yeah.
called, and you're at the behest of the Gluckans, which is just like obviously a funny play on glutton.
Mm.
When you're working at like a meat processing plant, and he's talking about, oh yeah, we used to make all these really cool meat munchies, but then the meaches went extinct, and now we make these paramite pies and these scrab cakes, and then I found out that they're going to be putting us in pies soon as well.
Yeah,
So you
yeah.
have to escape and you have to liberate
What is it? It's Madokan Pops. Is that what it is? It's
Moken
like the
Pops, yeah.
yeah. It's like a Buffalo Bill, except it's like a Madokan head instead of a little cowboy guy. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah. It's
basically
so
like
it's
the
so
head on a
fucked
stick.
because it's like and it's funny as well because I was trying to this weekend I was playing the original one, like the
Mm.
original PC port, and the Madokan Pop is like an absolutely grotesque image. It's literally just like a Madokan head, like a really
Oh,
graphic
okay.
Madokan head on like a spear.
Like no
Um,
metaphors here. Like this is
Yeah, yeah. There's no metaphors at all. But then you play the new revised, new and tasty version, and they
Mm.
have made it to look more like a popsicle. And it's like, why
Oh
did they do
right.
that?
Wow. Mm.
Games are just going woke
It could have
nowadays,
been
and
a rating thing, but yeah.
yeah, it's got to be. But yeah, no, I was playing that this weekend, and I was having just like such a good time, and just sat there being like, "Damn, I never knew that when I was playing this when I was a kid, this would just like be our life, right? We're all
Well,
trying to escape the capitalist
yeah,
machine."
I was talking about it with a friend, and I feel like for a long time, like I think in the 90s, that kind of narrative was super common. Like everything from when everything from movies like fucking even shitty outsider stuff like the Toxic Avenger or whatever, and
Yeah,
then like the cartoons that eventually hit like TV based on that, or like the Swamp Thing comics were all and comics and cartoons and movies and stuff were all super, like anti-corporate, pro-environmental. Even like Sonic the Hedgehog with like Dr. Robotnik getting all the fucking getting all the animals into those things, and you have to run around and pop
yeah,
them out. And then when they made the cartoons and they gave like further kind of explanation to that, and of course Captain Planet,
a
like
classic.
yeah, just stuff like that. It was like everywhere, and I think like I don't think that those kind of narratives are super popular in kids media anymore. Like it
No, you
tends
got
to
Paw
be
Patrol, which is just like, hey, you
yeah
should be a cop.
yeah
Um,
yeah like a lot of stuff seems reduced to these kind of like short little like interpersonal like kind of like things like teaching kids about like social skills or whatever like that, as a like instead of like I guess like with a lot of stuff like Captain Planet and stuff, it was like giving you these little kind of like like social moral kind of examples and stories for children to learn from, but it was also kind of like this greater theme of like like the earth is dying, or like like corporations are taking over, and it was very clear like like I still remember, I can't remember his name, but I think it was in the Toxic Crusader or Toxic Avenger, whatever cartoons, there was an enemy that was literally just this guy in a suit that had like big like smog pipes coming out his back. And it's just like they were so like they weren't trying to hide it or anything like that, and it was like kind of permeated the whole thing. So yeah, I think it is interesting that it's fallen out of favor. I do wonder if it's like because back then it was like it wasn't taken so seriously, and they were really just kind of like, oh, we're just like making kids shows to sell fucking toys or whatever.
right.
we're just gonna, put whatever in, and then maybe the creative teams got away with a little bit more.
The capitalists
Um,
weren't paying attention to the actual story that was being told by the
yeah,
writers because they were just like, oh yeah, whatever, like do whatever, just make it good and we'll sell
yeah,
the
just as
toys.
long as as long as we can sell these figurines. Yeah. Oh, Dr. Killimov was the name of the suit guy with the pipes, which is amazing.
Quality.
But yeah, stuff like that. Whereas like these days, I think that that whole industry is way more kind of like locked in around they're just churning out. I mean, like from what I've seen from like my nieces and nephew and stuff like that, it's the cartoons that come out these days are real like high turnover kind of, like even the way that they're animated and stuff, it's like very like you're not gonna get something like, from what I gathered, it's kind of like it seems like they're mass producing episodes in a completely different way, where it's like
Yeah.
there's a lot more like kind of like reusable assets, and like I've watched a bunch with my nieces and nephew and seen that like it doesn't seem to be any like long-term evolving storyline. It's just like these little vignettes sort of thing, and it's just like,
Dope.
here's the Paw Patrol doing this. Okay, here's a Paw Patrol doing that. They're dealing with this, and
No
yeah,
character development,
yeah, yeah,
no
yeah,
evolution, no actual timeline. Just
yeah.
repeat, rinse and repeat different stuff every week.
Mm, yeah. So I don't think you're really going to get any kind
Cool.
of like anything as brave as some of these shows were, and you're definitely not going to
Yeah.
get anything that's like, I guess, like either artistically interesting either. Like you're not going
Yeah.
to get like I think back about shows like Rugrats, and like the kind of, even like the kind of messaging that they put out in those shows and how
Mm-hmm.
well they held up. And but then even just like some of the animation in it was like really incredible, and it's like you're not
Yeah.
going to get that on a budget these days. You're not
Nah,
gonna like,
nah.
yeah, there's no
It just doesn't happen.
yeah,
But
yeah.
there you go. That's your cold open for this week. I hope that was good.
Yeah,
We are going to kick off the show. It's Red Planet. Welcoming everybody. We're going to kick off the show the same way that we normally do every week. And I'm going to ask Tim, what is the most base thing you've done this week, my friend?
well, probably just more of the same, to be honest. It was another like a Free Palestine kind of shindig the other day that I actually just like, I didn't even know was happening. I just like left work and was like heading downtown to head home, and I was like, oh, okay, here we go. Which is kind of like, I don't know, it's fucking wild how it's like there's these protests have been so persistent and so like, that they're just, they've become a thing in downtown Auckland, where it's like if you're in downtown Auckland on the weekend, like it's probably going to be happening. Even yeah, like just if it's just something smaller or whatever, and it's kind of like our government has only just recently been like, oh, maybe we should, I don't know, maybe we'll get together with some other people and we'll talk about recognizing a Palestinian state. It's like this kind of thing where it's like, man, like it's very
Platitude
clear
shit. Yeah.
that the population, like the working class people of the country, almost universally against what's been happening over there. The only people that aren't are like hyper online Zionist freaks or whatever,
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, yeah, just that, I guess. Yeah, but what about you, Mule?
Well, I've been working pretty hard this week, so did not have too much time for based stuff, but I had a bit of an idea. Just based on some conversations that I've had with Soph, who can't be with us this week, and also some other trans people, on
Hmm.
what I can do potentially to help trans people in the current attack on trans rights in the UK. And basically, the idea is very, very basic. I just think that this is like a really easy civil disobedience campaign that people can engage in, because we're going to get into it in a minute, but it looks like the advice that's going to be coming out is, it's legal to discriminate, but it's not illegal to not discriminate, if that makes sense. So, you know, you can have um, a trans person use the toilet that represents their gender in your place of business and nothing will happen to you, essentially. It's just kind of advice as far as I know, but obviously there'll be more information on that as it comes out. But my idea is essentially to get a bunch of stickers printed out that are just kind of like circle stickers with the trans flag on the background, and whatever the organization is going to be called, I don't know what it's going to be called at the moment, but you know, just kind of have it as like approved venue. You go in, you speak to the venue owners, you know, the management or whatever, and you say, listen, will you participate in this? Will you participate in this civil disobedience, you know, to make trans people feel welcome in your establishment? If yes, okay, sign up. Here's what we, you know, want to do. Here's what we can help you with. We can help you with understanding advocacy. We can help you with understanding how to confront someone who may be attacking a trans person in your place of work. You know, we can speak to your security. We can speak to your staff. You know, get us in for a day, and we'll just very, very easily just break it down for you. This is what you do. This is what you say. These are the words to look out for with someone who's using this kind of language against trans people, and just kind of have it like that, and have it on like in like a two-way kind of street in terms of the stickers will be there so that trans people can see, oh right, this is a trans friendly venue. I know that if something happens to me here, I can ask the staff and something's going to happen. You have like a little bit of advice on like, you know, a printed flyer in the toilet that just basically says, if you feel like you're getting attacked, go to the bar and just ask for a member of staff and say, I'm trans and I think I'm getting discriminated against by someone in the toilet. And then the staff will assist you. But then also there will be sort of like a accountability part of it where it's like, if you feel that the staff in this venue are not treating this seriously, you could get in touch with us and we will hold them accountable and, you know, speak to the management and stuff like that. So that's the basics of what it is at the moment. I'm going to spend a bit of time this week just doing like a little WordPress website. You know, it's going to be pretty fucking easy. I'm going to speak to some other trans girls in the you know, in Manchester, and just see if anyone wants to help me out with it, because I just think like as a cis person, this is like pretty much the most basic thing that you could do is like try and do an advocacy group where you're like, you know, obviously informed by trans people and what trans people are saying, but doing a lot of the work because trans people are fucking exhausted right now. So that's my idea. A wonderful person in the YouTube chat has said, is there any way to get involved with this campaign? No, because I haven't started it yet. But I really appreciate the keenness to get involved. You know, more information
in
here.
a way, that person is just as involved as you are right now.
Exactly.
You know? So they can be wherever they are, you know, they can be doing the same thing. There we go.
Exactly. Like, you may not be in Manchester. If you're not in Manchester, if you're somewhere else in the UK, what you do is you copy exactly what I just said and you just do it in your town or city in the UK. Yeah. So that would be my advice. But there you go. There is my base thing for the week. Thanks for asking, Tim.
Yeah. All right. Well, how about we just kind of carry on that note, and you can just run us through what's happening over there at the moment with the EHRC?
Sure. But before that, we normally do another thing.
We do. I almost tricked you there. You almost fell for my ruse.
Go on. Go on, you do it, because then it's like...
Yeah. All right. So we want to know what base things you've been doing. You can message us on Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok, or send an email to based@redplanetshow.com. Include your name and pronouns if you're cool with that, and we may shout it out in a later episode.
There you go.
I always think that like this kind of stuff happens when there's only two of us, because it's just like back and back instead of like if there's three of us, we're kind of passing it around. But
yeah, you can kind of wait for someone else to do it when it's more than two of us. Oh, Jesus. Well, you are right. Why don't I tell you about what is happening over here on the other side of the fucking globe? Okay, so this is the news that the EHRC, that's the Equality and Human Rights Commission in the UK, is going to be giving advice to businesses. It's been reported that it is going to be legal to discriminate against trans people. So it's been reported that most of the advice is going to boil down to trans women can be banned from single-sex spaces if Parliament agrees that the advice from the EHRC aligns with the law. This is the law that has been set by the Supreme Court ruling that the definition of woman aligns to someone's biological sex. This happened in the Supreme Court in the UK in April. And of course, if you are aware of the ins and outs of that decision, it was overwhelmingly biased. It was led by a group called Sex Matters. No, hang on, it wasn't. It was For Women Scotland. These are all TERF groups. I'm absolutely certain that Sex Matters was involved as well, but Sex Matters, I think, is also involved in the EHRC advice. It's really tough to figure out which organizations are kind of at the helm of this stuff, because there's a few of them that are essentially quite clearly well-funded from the evangelical lobby from the United States, and they seem to just have access to the UK legal system in a completely undemocratic fashion. But, such is the case in capitalism. The person who will be presenting this change in advice to Parliament will be Bridget Phillipsson. She is the Women's and Equalities Minister, who is known to have said that, quote, Labour will protect women's spaces, and she's also said some other TERF dog whistles. Cleo Madeline from Gendered Intelligence said, if the reports are accurate, it suggests the EHRC has abandoned its commitment to equality and human rights, and, quote, endorses harassment and exclusion of anyone who doesn't fit in, end quote. It is imperative, as I was saying earlier, that cisgender people, we do all we can to support trans people at the minute. If you're in Manchester, there is a trans assembly that you could support. Reach out to trans friends if you're anywhere else in the UK. See what they need help with, not just individually, but if there are organisations with trans people in your area. I just think that this is an incredibly easy win if we have a mass pressure campaign. I do think it is possible to reverse this. It's absurd nonsense. That is essentially saying, right, we're going to give the right to businesses to be able to have gender police in their place of business. Like, people who are going to be like, yeah, but what genitals have you got? Which is just completely insane. Like, we shouldn't be accepting that we live in this kind of fucking world. It's just fucking absurd. Before the ban passes, I think it's important to say as well that before the ban passes, this will enable fascist TERF scum to challenge anyone that they want to in and around toilets. So if you're a cisgender person and you ever see this happen, you must stand up and say something and defend anyone being challenged in a toilet or near one, if they're trans or not. It might be someone who's saying, I'm not even trans. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't not support them. Like, literally, this is what people have been saying for ages, is that this kind of a thing will just affect so many people. There are so many people who are gender non-conforming.
Yeah. Like, there's already been cases. I've seen videos online and I've heard of stories anecdotally of people that are cis, but maybe they don't fucking conform to some TERF's narrow idea of like what is like female presenting or whatever. But then and it's like, and often the TERFs themselves don't even and I've seen these videos of people getting confronted in bathrooms because they got short hair or broad shoulders or anything like that. So and it's like there's all that shit going on right now. There was the Marks and Spencers thing where let's talk a little bit about that. yeah. So some TERF and a kid were at Marks and Spencers, and a staff member came up to them in the middle of the store, and was just like, hey, do you guys need any help? And then they went to the internet and they were like, this trans person came up to my daughter and tried to fit her for a bra or whatever like that, when like in reality none of that shit happened. Like, they just made up this crazy story. But like the craziest thing is like they don't even know if the staff member was trans.
Well, let's not gloss over it. Like, what you said there is so true. Like, none of this happened. Like, it cannot be stressed enough that every single thing that these TERFs were saying happened just did not happen. I believe that there was even correspondence between someone who was asking about that store in particular, and I think that they responded saying like, yeah, there are actually no trans staff at our store. And stuff like this. It's like, it's not even just like, oh yeah, well, this person didn't say this. Oh, well, actually they didn't come up to this person. Oh, they weren't in
Yeah.
this section. It's like, no, there's not even any trans people
Yeah,
at
yeah.
this fucking store, apparently.
Yeah, there's no
I don't
trans
know
people.
about
They
I don't know about that last bit, but I'm
yeah, yeah.
sure I saw that.
It's just like wild, and so J.K. Rowling spread it and all this kind of stuff as well. But like the wildest thing is that, yeah, it's like it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to them if the person is trans or not, really, because they'll just
Right.
make up their own mind anyway. But it shouldn't matter to us either. It shouldn't matter like if, like regardless of what's going on, if someone is being harassed for their, even if they are cis, like, and or whatever, like if they're cis, if they're trans, whatever, like that, it's just like it's just an insane way for them to interact with other people in the world, and it's like that alone is enough to kind of shut it down, and yeah, I've heard of stories happening even down here because we have like our conservative coalition government have kind of like they just follow the cues from the UK and the US and stuff. And I think it's like very clear that there is like international coordination between these conservative groups and all this kind of stuff, but they tend
Yeah.
to sit and wait and see what's happening in the UK and then just try and just follow or whatever. And so they do have like their little fucking gremlin foot soldiers out in public that are just like just like hyper online boomers that have tried shit like this, have tried
Mm.
to stop people from going into bathrooms or changing rooms and all this kind of stuff. And I've heard it anecdotally from friends. No one directly that I know, but like a lot of people have someone who, like a friend of a friend was, it's obviously anecdotal, like, going to a changing room or bathroom and someone stopped them or whatever. And, it's like it's fucking wild. I think the best thing that you can do, and in my experience, whenever I've heard or seen someone kind of like I've been there in public before where someone has like called someone a slur, like like the T slur or F slur or something like that. And I think the best thing you can do is just be like loudly and like unapologetically like just get involved, like
Yeah.
like just be like, hey, what's up, like that's not fucking cool, like what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
And then like, and we talked about this the other week, the idea that it's like it's not always the first person to get involved, but the second person is what kind of dictates the mood of the crowd or whatever. So if you
Absolutely.
do
Yeah.
see someone confronting someone, instead of just walking by, you really got to be like that second person that goes over and be like, and says like, yeah, like that's fucked up. Like, what are you doing? Like, are you the fucking pee pee poo poo police? Like,
I think
like,
it's also important to stress that there's different ways that you can support people as a bystander. There are loads of different techniques. If you have any kind of anxieties about what might happen, if you're not a fan of confrontation, even just going up to the person who's being targeted and going, "Hey, how's it going? Like, I recognize you. Like, do you want to, should we go somewhere else where we can have a
oh
better chat
yeah,
or something?" Something like that is like really effective.
yeah. I've done that
Conflict and
before where you
confront.
just see someone
Yeah,
and you just go like, oh, hey, how's it going? Are you all right? Should we go? Like
yeah,
just
yeah. Conflict and confrontation can be difficult for some people. Like, it's kind of one of those. Like a lot of the times when you're in a place like this with someone, the kind of confrontation that you'll have with them will just be like a shouting match for like a bit,
yeah,
until like at least another person stands up and goes, "Yo, you need to fuck off, you weirdo," right?
yeah.
So you have to kind of be prepared to engage for
Mm,
that amount of time.
yeah.
And I guess like just go equip if you're happy to do the conversation. I guess just like go for it and just yell like Tim said, just be like, "PB poo poo police, are you a weirdo? Are you a fascist?
Yeah,
Why do you
yeah,
want to see this person's cock
yeah,
or pussy?" Like, just keep going, say yada 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 yada, don't
yeah,
let them
yeah.
speak, just tire them out.
Like that thing
um
where you like really highlight that they are being the freak. I think it always helps. Like what are you
mm,
doing? Like why are you fucking around with people in bathrooms? Like what are you doing? Like
yeah,
are you trying to fucking see what they got in their pants? Like what's wrong with you?
literally, yeah,
Like yeah,
literally. Yeah, I think that's great. Yeah. I think you could even just straight up just be like, "Are you a pedo?" Like, you know what I
Yeah, 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 yeah.
mean? You could just be like, "What's this got to do with you? Are you a pedo? Are you a pervert? Are you a
Yeah,
rapist?"
yeah.
Like, if you just say shit like that, like,
Mm,
yeah, you'll stress them out, and I think that's
yeah,
the way to do it, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway,
And I
but
think it's
observe
like
the
it's
law wherever you
yeah,
are, because
definitely
you might
something that
get
people
in
are going to
trouble.
have to get a lot more comfortable doing as well.
Yeah.
I think like the way things are hitting at the moment. So it's kind of like even if you don't feel great about doing it now, like I think it's something that you should be like be aware of. Like this is something that you might have to well, it's going to get more likely that you're going to need to be able to
Yeah.
do. So
Like, I think you got to ask yourself,
start
we're
yelling at strangers today.
yeah, like we've got to ask ourselves, like seriously, like I think in most imperial core countries, what world do you want to live in? Do you want to live in the world where you have to shout at a person in public for a bit, and maybe get in trouble with the bouncers and the police and spend a night in a cell,
Hmm.
or do you want to live in the world where you have to hide like a trans person in your floor?
Yeah,
Right? Do you know
yeah,
what I mean?
yeah,
Like, what
exactly.
world do
Like,
you want to live in? Like,
yeah.
you decide. Um, you
Like I
have
feel
to
like
push
our
back.
like kind of our predecessors have done so much, like whether it's like, and I mean like not just like our direct ancestors, but our ideological predecessors have done
Oh yeah.
so much that it's like we can yell at someone's fucking brain wound nana in the mall. We can do that.
Literally. It's literally only ever boomers as well. Like that's the thing
I
as well.
know.
Like of course, if you come across like a young freak, kind of one of these like crusty reform voters in the UK, like you'll know what I'm talking about if you live in the UK. It's just like a guy who looks like a hipster but actually is just a fascist.
Mm,
If you come across a guy like that, sure, that's going to be scary. But like 90% of the times it's not going to be a guy like that. Like those are the kinds of guys that are just going to be more likely to be out in the street trying to do a fucking pogrom at a hotel or some shit. Do you know what I
yeah.
mean? And like yeah, that's a problem too, and we're going to talk about that in a bit, I guess. But like yeah, it's different things, different tactics for different people, and there's loads of ways that you can do it. Speaking of different tactics, Tim, why don't you tell us about the Defend Our Juries protest yesterday here in the UK?
Yeah, cool. So, Defend Our Juries organized a mass protest of civil disobedience over the prescription of recently prescribed group Palestine Action, which we have covered, like quite a bit over the last couple of weeks, and we've followed Palestine Action in the past, and so this took place on the 9th of August and drew a crowd of around 1,000 people, but not everyone was there taking part in the civil disobedience. So according to most sources, of the 500 or more people engaging in the civil disobedience, 466 were arrested for holding signs. Of those 466, if their ID and details were given in a temporary police station, they were released on the condition of not breaking the law. It seems as the only conditions were to not attend any protests in support of Palestine Action, which is the law. So yeah, which is wild. I did even see there was there was one person that got arrested, and their what did their sign say? Their sign said, "I do not support Palestine in action."
That's right.
And it's like, like so they were just like they were just rounding everyone up. And like obviously we've heard from other protests, police arresting people just for having like Palestine flags and things like that already. So it's like they're casting a very wide net here. So the rest of the protesters, who valiantly refused to give their information to the police, remain in custody, many of them likely in solitary for the standard 3 days under the Terrorism Act, possibly longer. One protester said, if they ban Palestine Action, what other group is next? Until we're just no longer allowed to protest anything, that's the opposite of democracy. Another, Jacob Ecclestone, 86, said, I believe in freedom of speech. What this government is trying to do is deeply authoritarian, and it's extremely dangerous. Met Police also arrested multiple disabled people, including two blind people, as terrorists. what we have to think of in relationship to this ban is what it means for civil disobedience. It means that the Met Police do not have the power to arrest more than 466 people. Even if they did, the temporary processing centers could not have worked if all 466 refused to give their details. There would be no rooms at any jails or police stations in London. It also is a clear message. Whilst fascist pogroms are going on around the country, with a woman in Leeds filmed doing a clear Elon Musk-style Nazi salute, and Nick Tinconi of UKIP doing a Trump neck wash dance alongside another Elon Fash salute in Portsmouth this weekend, that the police are on the side of the fascists right now in the UK. We must understand that UK fascism is now. It is happening. We cannot keep lying to ourselves. There is nothing more evil coming. Reform are no huge threat compared to what is happening now. They are only running on the same thing the evil Labour fascist government is doing. Fascism in the UK has arrived in pinstripe suits, just like all the pundits commenting on the authoritarian nature of the UK in the 20th century and its acceleration in the 21st said it would. The time is now for unity, for the left to come together and put a stop to this madness. Mass civil disobedience and building dual power is the only way to save whatever kind of freedom we perceive to have in this country. Like, it's exactly that, right? Like, when we look at, you know, all of the media kind of like that we've created over the last even like, you know, like almost 100 years of like this idea of like fascism coming to England, like everything like V for Vendetta, all of that kind of stuff, like, you know, like, yeah, it's all like, this is it, like, this is it, it's just doing the thing, like,
Yeah,
even in some cases what we're seeing now is already more extreme than like the nightmare dystopian scenarios that we've seen.
100%.
You know, it's like,
100%.
and it's like, I mean, it's like, it's terrible. The last couple of years we're just seeing everything from like V for Vendetta to like RoboCop and all this kind of stuff, just like literally like it's all just happening. You know, we got
Hmm.
like AI drones flying around Gaza playing fucking baby crying noises. We got like fucking, you know, people like senior citizen, blind, elderly people arrested for simply opposing, you know, like genocide. It's like, and it's like all for what, you know, for this like this shitty little
To
tyrant state in the Middle East, you know, like,
Yeah, to desperately hold on to power, right? Just to
yeah, yeah,
desperately just carry on in some
just
way.
yeah, and just like completely losing any illusion of like the liberal rules based order, you know, like it's just, it's gone. You can't say that now, you know, like I'm sure they will, but it's like we've seen it now, like the mask is fucking dropped.
Fully off.
Yeah, it's pretty fucking terrible. But in more positive news, what do you tell us about what's going on in Belgium?
Yeah, I'm really chuffed to be the one reading this story, and I'm really sorry that Tim, you've got all the bad ones this week. So yeah, this is great. Belgium's Manif Fiesta 2025 to emphasize resistance and internationalism. So left organizations in Belgium are using the typically slower European summer to gear up for Manif Fiesta, the annual festival of solidarity that many recognize as the launchpad for a new cycle of political activities in the region. I'm sure that people from the ZAD, our friends at the ZAD, will be heading to this. This year's edition, set to take place on September the 13th and 14th in the coastal city of Ostend, claims to reflect the country's current political climate while capturing a broader spirit of resistance. The event will spotlight two key struggles: opposition to the new far-right government's militarization, slashing public services, and global solidarity with Palestine, linking local and international fights against imperialism. Organised by the Workers' Party of Belgium, PTB, PVDA, and allies like Medics for the People, the festival combines analysis of capitalism's crises with socialist visions, from healthcare under socialism to labor strikes against war profiteers. Activists from Cuba, South Africa, the Philippines, and beyond will join panels in English, Dutch, French, emphasizing internationalism over NGO-style aid. Highlights include Palestinian health workers and Cuba's Henry Reeve brigades, contrasting socialist solidarity with Western complicity in genocide. Panels will expose how austerity and militarization destroy public health, for example, forcing sick workers back to jobs to suppress wages, or Israel's attack on Gaza's hospitals. Campaigns like Boycott Tiva, Israeli farmer, will be highlighted. With speakers like Jeremy Corbyn, NUMSA unionists, and Chris Smalls from the Amazon labor union, Manif Fiesta aims to mobilize post-summer movements. As one organizer puts it, you leave with oxytocin from hugs and a plan to smash capitalism. Yeah, sounds great. I mean, this is the thing that we're seeing more and more again all over the imperial core is strictly radical events like this that are directly challenging the imperialism, of our nations. And it's interesting because you can take a look at somewhere like the UK, for example, and in England, it's pretty rare to see something this big that would be organized in the UK. I think the closest thing to it would be the World Transformed, which is happening in October in Manchester, actually. I'm hoping to get a gig filming it, so keep your fingers crossed, everyone, for me, because that'll be a great bit of money. um, but yeah, I think that might be the closest thing to something like this in the UK. I think we have to start thinking about ourselves in Europe in the same way as people think about themselves in the so-called United States. It's a huge, huge, massive land made up of various different states, and we have to stop thinking about borders and stuff like that. We have to really be thinking of ourselves in the UK as part of Europe, the broader kind of landmass and stuff like that. And it's like, all right, okay, the UK is struggling a little bit with getting some anti-fascist response, some actual resistance to the terror of the state, at the moment. But we could take inspiration from Belgium. We can take help from Belgium. We can take help from the Netherlands, which is, making moves to designate Israel as a foreign interference of the state, and one that seeks to change political ideology based on infiltration and stuff like that. So, we have to take hope where we can get it, right? Although that might just be me projecting a little bit onto this particular news story, but it's great. And we will keep an eye on Manif Fiesta and other stuff like this, and hopefully bring you the good news as time goes on. Speaking of time going on, Tim, tell us about the recent marking of 80 years since Nagasaki.
Yeah, so the city of Nagasaki commemorated the 80th anniversary of the US atomic bombing that killed 70,000 people by year's end, marking a tragic event in global history. Survivors and their families shared harrowing memories to push for nuclear abolition, emphasizing a world without war and urging younger generations to maintain this legacy. However, Japanese government still refuses to sign the treaty on the prohibition of nuclear weapons, despite overwhelming public support of the NPT. So that's the NPT is the UN nuclear proliferation thing. It's what the T stands for thing. So while the government hasn't ever clearly laid out exactly why it has refused to sign, aside from vague comments about nukes as a deterrent, political commentators have often pointed out the hypocrisy of the UN and Western nations like the UK and USA pressuring Japan into the agreement. The ceremony has also stirred controversy in recent years because of the absence of the US ambassador and other Western envoys in response to the Japanese city's refusal to invite officials from Israel, which is like very, like it's very based of Japan to be like, no, Israel, like you're not coming to this, not while
Yep.
this is happening. And also the same thing is like Israel hasn't signed any of the like the NPT or anything like that either,
Yep.
and yeah, it is an interesting thing because there is, like we all know that a world without nuclear weapons is the goal, but in a world with nuclear weapons, we've seen what has happened to the enemies of Western hegemony when they are disarmed. We've seen how easily, like, these nuclear nations just sweep in and clean them up. So, like obviously there are countries out there that are like, they're apprehensive about doing this kind of stuff because there's, like obviously America and a lot of other nations like Israel and stuff still do have nukes, and they have a lot of them. And even if they do sign these agreements or like shake hands about it and stuff, they're not getting rid of them, and it's usually written into these agreements that it's like, oh, but the guys that already have them can hold on to them for like, like deterrent reasons, or like, for like global safety, because someone needs to have them in case someone bad gets them or something like that. But it really kind of is just a way of just like reinforcing, the existing global hegemony. So yeah, so Japan as a country is super anti-nuke, like just the average person, like the approve, like I don't remember what the stats are, but it's like generally like basically everyone wants a nuclear free world there, like, and it's like not just weapons, but like they've obviously had stuff with Fukushima and stuff like that. So in general, the public consensus is like this is bad, and you can see it, like in everything from like like in a lot of like movies and anime and video games from Japan, there is like this very like consistent theme of like this is not great for us.
I saw
Um,
it was like a clip of an anime, and I don't even know what anime it was, but
mm,
it was so clearly just like children, old people, civilians getting vaporized over and over and over again. And
yeah,
it's like, yeah, this is really something that is, when something like this happens in your country and it's part of your history, especially
yeah.
recent history, it's just going to be so prolific in every kind of media that you create.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, yeah, I think it's like really core to the Japanese national identity now. Like, and like, I mean, that happens with every, kind of country where there has been something like so, like, I mean, I don't think there's not many countries in the world that have ever had something as gnarly as that. And it's like, it's important to remember, like, America is the only one that has ever done that, like dropped a bomb like that onto other people, like a lot of other countries are doing it, not directly onto people. Like a lot of people forget that France has dropped like something like 200 nukes in the Pacific, and a lot of small Pacific nations, well, they haven't directly, like their populations haven't been bombed, their islands have been, and they've been affected by the fallout of this.
Can you imagine what it does to the
Yeah,
fucking ocean? Like the
yeah,
France is just like, oh yeah, that's just the sea. Who
yeah.
cares? Like it's like, what do you mean? Like it's food for people. It's
Yeah, it's fucking wild, and yeah, and it's like this whole thing where it just like happens with no kind of like fanfare or anything. So yeah, so like obviously, like the people of Japan want a nuclear free world, and I mean arguably, like, everyone with their head screwed on right never wants another bomb, another nuke dropped like that in the world. But it's kind of like that thing where it's like they are, to do so would be being like exceedingly trusting of people that have proven time and again not to be trusted. And it's kind of like, when you get nations like the US are the ones that dropped the bomb on them, you know like, why aren't they the ones that have to be disarmed? Like,
right, exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, like, if we want to talk about Western hypocrisy, would be here all day. I mean, that's what we do, really. That's that's the straight.
We never do that. Famously, we never
Yeah,
talk about Western
famously never
hypocrisy.
talked about that. But yeah. Anyway, let's move on. Yeah, what do we move on to? A little bit of an update on what's been happening. We're in Gaza and Palestine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no worries. So multiple things this week. We're just gonna go through a bunch of them and maybe speculate and expand on the stories as we go. So the first part is Liverpool's Mohamed Salah, that's Mo Salah, calling out UEFA for honoring the Palestinian Pele, Suleiman al-Obeid, without mentioning the fact that he was killed in an Israeli airstrike on civilians in Gaza. The Palestinian Football Association said the 41-year-old died while waiting for aid. So, highly likely that he was bombed, along with all of the people who are awaiting aid in the death trap, death corridor that the so-called Gaza Humanitarian Foundation creates to draw Palestinians in to wait for aid while they murder them wantonly. A 15-year-old Palestinian boy, Mohammed Zakaria Eid, was crushed to death by a falling aid pallet in Gaza, highlighting the deadly chaos of Israel's blockade. At least 47 more Palestinians were killed in Israeli attacks on last Saturday, including people waiting for food. This is just something to highlight in terms of the so-called Israeli government has said, right, we're going to do some airdrops into Gaza. The reports on the ground from Gaza is that most of this food is rotting. There's no way for it to be checked by any kind of aid distribution organizations because the Israeli planes are just taking it from an airbase, dropping it off. That's it. You know what I mean? They get to look at it. They drop it off. They drop it out of a fucking plane. And a lot of the times the parachutes don't work because they don't fucking care. Because, again, this is death by aid. Some of the most horrific, just evil shit being perpetrated by the Zionist entity at the minute. Gaza's health ministry reports 212 deaths from malnutrition, including 98 children, as so-called Israel blocks aid trucks. Only 60 drivers are approved, and 266 WFP trucks were turned back in July alone. UNRWA has been barred from delivering aid for 5 months. Quote, we have repeatedly warned of the danger of these inhumane methods and have repeatedly called for the entry of aid through land crossings in a safe and sufficient manner, especially food, infant milk, medicines, and medical supplies, end quote, the Gaza government media office said in a statement. So-called Israel plans a full military takeover of Gaza City, threatening to forcibly displace 1 million people into southern, and this is a quote, concentration zones. So they are just saying it out loud. And again, they say these things out loud often live on Israeli television. They are not afraid of saying things like, we should kill them all. They should all be killed. They should all be murdered. They should all be put in a camp. They say it all the time, just to bear repeating. If you hit translate on a tweet in Hebrew, often you will discover a hidden page of Mein Kampf. Residents vow to stay. They tell us to flee, but nowhere is safe. The important thing to remember about this threat of invasion is that this is the fourth time that Netanyahu has said he is going to invade Gaza. He often starts with, we're going to invade Gaza, so implying the entire of the Gaza Strip is going to be invaded, and then he falls back immediately after his military aides say, just so you know, Chief, this ain't going to work. And then he will say something like, right, we're going to invade and occupy Rafah. We're going to invade and occupy the Morag corridor. We're going to invade and occupy Deir al-Balah. And he always falls back to these positions because the reality of things on the ground is quite different. And, this is always posturing the, it's important to stress that Israel's strength lies in its air force, right? Hamas, the military wing of Hamas, Al-Qassam, Saraya al-Quds, they don't have an air force, and constantly what happens when you look at the resistance reports, when you see what happens, in the actual footage from Al-Qassam and Saraya al-Quds, the soldiers will come into Gaza in armored tanks, armored vehicles, and they will essentially get assassinated by Saraya al-Quds, Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, any militant group. They will then have to run or seek shelter, because what Israel does in response to these attacks is basically blanket bombs the area. So that is the kind of tactics that the IOF employs when it comes to this stuff. It's important to remember that these people are grossly unprepared for something like a ground invasion. You know, people will remember that they attempted a ground invasion of Lebanon. Like I think it was late last year, and they just kept on getting whipped and whipped and whipped and whipped by Hezbollah because they are not trained. They are not prepared for this kind of a thing.
The ground force is like, it's like a bully occupying force, you know? It's
yes.
like, yeah, and like they just like they train them so poorly. They have all kinds of like these hilarious kind of like they have these like they train them in certain ways because they're like, okay, we like our training is fast and it's not super intense, so we do certain things to make sure that they kill each other less because their friendly fire rates are like huge or whatever. So you see like even like the way they like load their handguns and everything like that is like designed to stop a bunch of like stupid children from like shooting their dicks off. And it's like,
did we yeah, no, you're right. Oh my god, I've just realized that that's why they do that.
They do that thing where they go up like that.
Yeah, if people don't know what Tim's referring to, there is IOF training videos out there that you can see, which is supposedly IOF Special Forces training, and what they do is they raise their elbow up real fast. This is with a handgun. They raise their elbow up real high, like above their head, and load the gun that way. It's actually crazy how much time
it looks like the gun fu from that movie Equilibrium or whatever
Gun Carter.
It was. Yeah, it's like that, but it's like it's so funny. It's like yeah.
But you're right, because they're so incompetent that if they loaded it like a normal person loading a handgun with like as soon as you get it out your holster, you load it straight away. Like, of course they shoot themselves in the feet. Like, of course they do.
So like serious, and I'm not joking about this either. Like, this is literally why they adopted that. Like, it was like an existing technique that people use for other stuff, but they just found out like this is the one that they need to do because there's like, you know, they're always like shooting each other in the feet and stuff like that. But and there's other stuff as well about like the way that they you know, like the way that they drive tanks and all this kind of stuff. And they just it's like ridiculous. It's like
well the way that like
it's summer camp for them, you know, like IDF is like summer camp.
Right.
And it's like, man,
it's crazy.
I could go for ages about how
I think it's good. I think it bears focusing on, because at the end of the day, like, that's what we have to remember. If you know, in terms of taking hope from various different sources, we can absolutely take hope. I always say all the time, like, if you think that things are bad in the Imperial Court, where you're comfy, where like if things are getting a bit too stressful, you can like sit down and watch Netflix for a bit. Like, think about the fucking resistance in Gaza, man. Do you know what I mean? They're running around in tunnels. They're not having like, you know, a decent amount of food. They're starving in the same way that the civilians are. They're constantly expanding tunnels. They're digging all the time. They're constantly having to think of different ways to try and, you know, do operations, which means that they don't get murdered. And they're overwhelmingly successful. So successful. I'm going to go into this in a little minute because I want to talk about the current unrest in so-called Israel. So some people will have heard of a couple of weeks ago, perhaps a month ago, can't remember exactly when this happened, but Netanyahu's Knesset majority only holds one seat at the moment. The majority is only one seat of what it needs to be a majority. That is due to a mass exodus of the ultra-Orthodox Jewish parties. And this is over the controversial decision to draft in Haredim, the ultra-Orthodox Jews in Israel. And essentially, what we've got now in Jerusalem is scenes of, and I swear to God, it looks like something out of a, you know, we were talking before, Tim, about media and the way that things looked back in the day and stuff. Like, I saw a video of a raging meathead white guy with, you know, his head was so red because of all the steroids that he's doing and like all the shit he's doing before he goes out on like a cop. Like, he's a cop, right? He's just like a cop. He's wearing this body armor. He's got a big baton and he's beating the shit out of Orthodox Jews wearing, like, you know, the hats and the sideburns and everything. And it's like, what the fuck is happening? Like, how can you not see that this is anything like it's not anything different than fucking Nazi Germany. Like they are so
Yeah, yeah.
anti-Semitic. They are literally like, oh, all you Jews that like study the Talmud and study the fucking Torah, and you say that
Mm,
violence is bad and we shouldn't do it. We're gonna beat the shit out of you because you're
yeah.
refusing the draft, and that is why they're doing it.
Yeah, because they're like the Orthodox Jews are one of the only groups that gets like an exception. I think it's like
Yep.
them and maybe the Druze get an
Yeah, that's
exception
right.
as well.
Mhm.
And so there is like huge like like anti-Orthodox sentiment. I think especially at the moment when they're there have been um moments recently where they've talked about like, oh, actually we're running out of people like young kids that are like willingly like coming back, like redeploying after doing
Yep.
their kind of mandatory service and shit like that. So they're like, well, obviously we need more people, and then like
Yep.
you see in like Russia and Ukraine, they started like drafting people and stuff. Well, like in Israel, the Orthodox Jews don't do that. So there is like a huge kind of resentment of like, oh, they just like they live here in our fucking cool, amazing country and they don't want to go out and die for it. It's like,
Yeah. Yeah. The
the opposite
disdain,
actually.
the disdain that sectarian Zionists have
Mm.
for the Orthodox Jews is completely insane. Like,
Yeah.
hate to bring up the Kleins, but I saw a clip of Gila Klein talking about this the other
Oh,
day.
that's because she's like she's ex IDF and everything
Yeah,
as
she was
well.
in the IOF. Yeah, she's
Yeah.
clearly murdered multiple Palestinian children and just like doesn't give a
Mm.
shit. She was sat there and they were talking about the Haredim draft and the resistance to it, and she was just sat there just like, yeah, they just want to like pray all day. Like, yeah, they don't even want to like go and murder people. And it's like this disdain is absolutely vile. Anyway, so that's where it is. I mean, it's important to remember that like even amongst the ultra orthodox Jews in so-called Israel, not all of them are anti-Zionist. A
Mm.
large majority are anti-Zionist because they understand that it's not right to do murder and shit like that. But of course, there's going to be different sects. Of course, there's going to be different
Yeah.
parts that are not necessarily anti-Israel, but they're going to be anti-Zionist. They're going to be like Zionism is not the right way to do Judaism, the right way to study it, yada yada yada.
Mm.
So yeah, that's the kind of unrest that we're seeing at the moment. I mean, this is something that's happened like for a while because there's lots of Haredim in Jerusalem that will, wave Palestinian flags and support Palestinians, and the IOF, the so-called Israeli cops beat the shit out of them. This is a regular occurrence in Jerusalem. And yeah, it's really making Jews safe. Like, it's definitely looks like it's making Jews so safe. Another thing that has happened, like Tim said, a bunch of people, young people, not just refusing to redeploy, but also we're seeing like a huge uptick in young Israelis who are 17, 18, refusing the draft, burning their draft orders and going to prison because of it. This is like it's always been a bit of a thing that people do, but there's been a huge uptick in it recently and it's been popularized. There's various different organizations. You can check them out on Twitter. It's Mesarvot, I think, is the name. But don't quote me on that. I think you can find them on Twitter under Mesarvot. And on top of this, we've also got Israeli activists taken to the stage of the Israeli Big Brother final to protest the genocide. And this is explicitly against the genocide. It's talking about the killing of Gazans and how that needs to stop, and also that the IOF is killing hostages, which is something that we all know has been going on ever since the start of this genocidal war.
Yeah.
The next sort of part of it is that, as we've been alluding to, some Israel occupation forces refusing to go to Gaza, as Tim said, refusing to redeploy. And a lot of them cite extreme psychological damage, including knowledge of the actual IOF's true amount of casualties, which is approximately 18,000 injured. That number is a little contested because the Israeli media says it's 26,000, but actually about 17,000 or so is people with acute anxiety that are apparently injured. But 18,000 is the safe figure that we can look at of people who have actually been injured in things like Qassam, Al Qassam operations, resistance operations, and stuff like that. Also, there's a lot of like people who are in these armored caterpillar diggers and they go in to destroy houses, and like the houses fall on them because they don't know how to like destroy a house properly because they've not been trained, and they die like that, which is really funny. I'm not even gonna dress that up in any way. It's extremely funny that that's how they die. And yeah, the overall amount of dead IOF soldiers is being reported to be over 1,000, and that's actually so-called Israel's numbers. So very interesting, actually, that is the numbers that they're reporting, because it's likely more if that's the case, because Israel always underplays how much they're losing. It looks like there was a complete inability to replenish these numbers of dead and injured troops. This has also resulted in, this is reports from the Electronic Intifada, if you're wondering what my sources are on this. There is reports of a closing of comms in between units and different squadrons, essentially making them super nervous and not sure of the truth of the actual difficulty of the war, as they call it. There are also, as I said, no infantry patrols in Gaza. There's only armored vehicle patrols, and even they get battered by the PFLP, Al Qassam, and Soraya Quds. So there's a bit of an update on Palestine. I'm sure there's some stuff that we missed because there's so much stuff that's going on. I know that there was a successful port blockade. This was in Greece, I think, or Italy, or maybe it was both. I think it might have been Italy, like a successful port blockade to prevent weapons going there. That's something that I heard this week, and I'm just trying to think if there was anything else huge that we should report on. That's another huge thing. Yeah, I did want to focus on this a little bit. Germany said that they may be suspending all arms sales to the Zionist entity.
Yeah.
Not sure
Slovenia
about
do
this.
that just like a week ago, or so, a week and a little bit ago. We reported last time.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is like some kind of gray area stuff with that though, where they're like, oh, okay, we're not going to do any weapons, but we are going to do, things for like intelligence and components and all that kind of stuff. So it's like, like I feel like, yeah, and I know that activists in Slovenia are still pushing hard to be like, no, this isn't enough. We need to do more. So, good on them.
It's extremely important to remember that while it is a frustrating pressure valve release, there is definitely things to be said about pushing and pushing and pushing when that moment of weakness is basically shown by the state, because it's like, what they're doing is they're saying, shit, pressure is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. We've got to do something to placate the masses. So that means that they're terrified that things are going to get worse. So you have to just keep pushing, right? So that's that. Tim, speaking of pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing and very, very stressful wars, illegal wars, talk to us about Trump and Putin talks.
Yeah. So Trump and Putin have a little meeting planned in Alaska this coming week. And the Ukraine's President Zelensky has warned that deals without his country at the bargaining table will not bring peace. Something that I think is very clear. Ukrainians will not gift their land to the occupier, he said, warning that decisions without Ukraine would not bring peace. They will not achieve anything. These are stillborn decisions. They are unworkable decisions, and we all need real and genuine peace, peace that people will respect, added Zelensky. So yeah, despite multiple rounds of negotiations failing to yield results, Zelensky has called for real decisions, leading to this sustainable peace, underscoring the need for actual grassroots solutions instead of like top down and obviously like foreign imposed diplomacy. So the Ukrainian leader stressed that any peace deal has to respect Ukraine's territorial integrity, aligning with his wording and messaging was very aligned with kind of like anti-imperialist kind of ideas about Russia and stuff. And he wanted to ensure no unfair concessions. So previously, the Kremlin has insisted that Ukraine gave up the territories Russia occupies, and that Western nations stop supplying Ukraine with weapons and exclude the country from membership in the NATO military alliance. So Ukraine and its European allies have long opposed any agreement that involves ceding occupied territory, but Putin has repeatedly said any deal must require Ukraine to relinquish some of the territories Russia has seized. So this is another complicated one, and I think like you kind of have to approach a lot of this stuff with a lot of nuance, because especially when we're talking about anti-imperialism and we're talking about like Russia versus Ukraine, which is, you know, like obviously backed by the imperial core, you know. And yeah, there's like a lot of people try and draw these equivalences between like, you know, what's happening in Gaza and Ukraine, and like, you know, they're like, why is, you know, like why is this imperialism and it's not, or whatever like that. And so yeah, like I mean, I think like what's happening in Ukraine, so the Russian invasion of Ukraine was like, you know, it's like a terrible thing that has been like has cost so many working class people their lives, and it's really just been kind of like this power play game between NATO and Russia, you know. And it's like this is you know, it's like like as a leftist, I think it's like our duty to kind of support the working class of both of these countries over, you know, obviously like the fucking oligarchs and the NATO freaks and all that kind of stuff. But it's like, you know, I think there's like a lot of people that are like, okay, you know, like fuck Ukraine because it's like, you know, because of the connections with NATO and all this kind of stuff. And then, you know, you get people being like, well, fuck Russia because they obviously, you know, did this terrible invasion and all this kind of stuff. But yeah, I think like if you're being real with it, like everyone here sucks. Like everyone at the table sucks. Like Putin sucks. Everyone knows why he sucks. Like he's got a long history of fucking sucking, you know. Like NATO obviously sucks because they, you know, sat on the border for years and like, you know, stacked military shit, put, you know, aimed missiles at Russia and all this kind of stuff from Ukrainian space, and then disappeared when Ukraine was like, oh hey guys, you know, like you're gonna back us up now. And you know, like obviously that's why Putin doesn't want NATO in Ukraine anyway, because it's like, you know, they're just going to be fucking sitting over the fence pointing missiles at his shit. And then, you know, like these, like there should have been bargaining and concessions made a long time ago, like this, you know. But like both sides, both Ukraine and Russia, have really kind of like dragged this out to
Yeah.
the extreme detriment of their people, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
and there's like this kind of like cult that's built up around Zelensky as being like this, like, you know, kind of lionized him and stuff. And I think in the early days a lot of that kind of stuff was like, wow, like okay cool, this guy's really stepping up and shit. But it's like, it's, I feel like it's harder to take him seriously as that guy, and kind of like, you know, like I feel like, and I think especially when it comes down to stuff around territory, it's like there is you know, like there's worse things in the world than losing land when there's like you've got thousands of living people there, you know.
Yeah.
Especially considering I spoke about this. I had a client a little while back. Well, I still do have a client. She's like a regular mine who her family is from the Donbass region. And she's like, it was only when I moved to New Zealand that I realized that when I found out we were Ukrainian and not Russian, you know? Like she's like, I mean, like she obviously knew that her family lived in Ukraine, but she was like
Yeah.
ethnically, language wise, culturally, and all this kind of stuff. She's like, we, you know, we're Russian, we spoke Russian, we did
I think
Russian
that's the
culture,
thing.
education.
There was such a denial of that kind of thing, and it
Mm,
all came from imperialist
yeah,
messaging, which was
yeah, yeah,
like, no, the Russians have infiltrated the Donbass region and made Ukrainians think that. And it's like, I don't know, man. Maybe you ask Ukrainians. I don't know. Maybe
yeah,
this
yeah,
is more complicated than that. Maybe people
exactly,
feel
yeah,
ethnically some way and they
yeah.
don't, feel another way. It's so obvious, right?
And there's like you know, and there is like a long history of you know, there's obviously like a history of, you know, conflict around this land in particular. And I mean, you know, there's like a lot of reasons to do with that, like a lot of like the resources and just like the position of the space and all that kind of stuff. But uh yeah, it's like there needs to be, yeah, like there's like a point in time where you just got to go like, hey man, like actually, like we can't just let you just keep throwing people into, the meat grinder for this. And I mean, like, like I know there's probably like young Ukrainian soldiers that are like, no, like we're glad to go, we're glad to fight, and all this kind of stuff. But it's like you really got to just see like where does it end, like, at what point,
Yeah.
yeah, when's enough. And yeah, there's also a lot of the other stuff, like there's like people in those regions that really dislike the Ukrainian government because there is a history of Ukrainian the Ukrainian government doing, what would be considered terrorist attacks against their own people in those
Yep.
areas. Like we look at like what happened with the airports and all that kind of stuff, and it's like, yeah,
Were
like, like,
huge protests in Ukraine. Like that was some of the first ever
yeah,
lively videos that I used to
yeah,
watch.
yeah, exactly.
We're like, yeah, when in Ukraine they had like the big it was the first time that I'd ever seen civilians who would use like big corrugated iron
Yeah, yeah,
shields to stop people from like to stop military police literally shooting them.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and it's just like, yeah,
Yeah, so I don't know. Like
psycho
maybe
shit.
there's like some kind of democratic solution where it's. I mean, that's like I know this is unreal because it's like you're talking about relinquishing, like power and stuff to the working class, but like,
Right.
it's like literally just asking the people, like, doing a vote or something like that, like a
Yeah.
referendum on like what do we think, which would obviously never happen and it's probably like
No.
just dreaming and stuff. But it's yeah, it is wild just to see like, and like nobody wants to admit that it's like it, I think people treat that like a loss to be like, hey, actually maybe we need to give this up. But it's
Of
like,
course.
yeah, and it's like, I mean, of course you would feel like that. You'd probably, yeah, I don't know, but
No,
at the
I think
same
I think
time
you're
it's like,
right. I think that like that's really what we have to remember is that there is an extremely unique, things like this are unique, and I think it's a bit annoying and frustrating. I remember reading some pieces from Ukrainian anarchists and communists in the periodical that I get, which is Organized magazine at the start of the war,
mm,
and there was a lot of people talking about like West blaining and stuff like that, and
yeah,
things are completely fucking different on the ground in Ukraine, and people are gonna say like all kinds of crazy things, and it's like. I remember hearing one anarchist say like, "Yeah, look, man, like, I'm fighting for my country, and yeah, okay, there's a Nazi next to me, but we're both shooting Russians who are also Nazis."
yeah, yeah,
You know what I mean? Like
mm,
things are difficult, things are complex. And again, like I'm not sat here saying that like, yeah, it's fine that like Ukrainian anarchists like want to fight with
yeah,
a Nazi or whatever, but like maybe it's not our place to be like,
yeah,
yo, you should do this and you should be like this. Like they know what's going on in their country better than we do. And I think that we have to remember that like any kind of idea that we have of things being a loss is things that have been, we've been propagandized to believe
mm,
that it would be a loss by the media, right?
yeah,
Because
yeah,
they're like, don't cede any ground to Russia, no ground ceded to Russia,
exactly, yeah,
and that is only because our imperialist nations don't want to lose any power, and something
yeah,
like that would be seen as a show of weakness. And of course, fascists are like, never show weakness. So,
yeah, yeah.
no, I do see where you're coming from with that,
And
and
I
I
think
agree.
like
Yeah,
I have seen Ukrainian leftist groups, Ukrainian and Russian leftist groups who are both like against this conflict and stuff like that,
right.
both expressing uneasiness with the amount of power that has been handed to groups like Azov and stuff during this conflict. And like I did see, I can't remember the name, but they're a communist group in Ukraine being like, okay, cool, like, like we were fighting alongside these guys when we had a common cause, but I don't understand why we have to, like, these particular groups are being handed so much political power. And I think there's like
Right.
a real worry there that it's kind of like once this thing is all wrapped up, that groups like Azov are going to be kind of more entrenched in the state than they already
Yeah.
kind of are, and it's like it's this like, and like and then being obviously uncomfortable with that, being like, okay, cool, like obviously like they're, like we're out there and we're all fighting this common enemy together, but like what's going to happen after this?
Yeah.
like what kind of, what kind of life are we going to go back to once the fighting stops?
Yeah, I think it feels like,
Yeah.
if you think about, if we talk about the Fortress Europe, right, which is the thing that
Mm.
is amping up so hard at the moment. You can look at what Labour are doing in the UK with all the deportations. You can look at the way that Turkey is, trying so desperately to disarm the PKK, successfully so. Like, I still believe that that's a fucking ARP. I don't believe that the
Yeah.
leader of the PKK said
Mm.
that. And if we look at like what's going on in Ukraine. Ukraine is also the border of Fortress Europe.
Yeah.
I imagine that the way that people are thinking in power at the moment, they're thinking, okay, climate disasters, refugees from wars, where are they going to come from? Russian border. They're already
Mm.
coming from the Russian border. They're coming from the Syrian border. They're coming from, all these other places. And so we're seeing the Turkification, I think, of Ukraine. I imagine that Ukraine already had very, very similar politics to Turkey in that regard, in its position in the, basically as part of the wall of Fortress Europe. But I think like to really establish power, it would make sense to arm militias like fascist
Mm.
militias who are like, no, absolutely no, because they were doing that shit with because a lot of the Russians that were coming to fight were Muslim, right? And they were doing
Yeah.
that shit. They were like covering their bullets in pig fat. They were like,
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
heaven for you, and shit like that. Just absolute psycho shit. So yeah. It makes complete sense that they would like, even after the war, they would have fascist militias who would like oppress communist sentiment, left wing
Yeah. Yeah.
sentiment of a truly democratic Ukraine that was holistic and looked after refugees and shit like that, and maybe had good relations with Russia. Because no, you have to keep up this insane fucking theater of evil empire versus good empire
Yeah.
nonsense, right? So yeah, I totally get where you're coming from with that, 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess it's like for me, I think that like I am extremely distrustful of both sides.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I say, like um I try to look for, whenever I'm looking for updates on the area, look for like, like local kind of like leftists, Marxists and anti-imperialists and stuff. And it can be hard to find sometimes. And like you said, sometimes you see like stuff from like not specifically anarchists, but like how you saw the anarchists talking about working with Nazis and stuff. Like I've seen some leftist groups over there that are very like like that very reactionary communist kind of like, like kind of uh really quite, I would say like the similar version to those like American MAGA communists, but
I
like
was
the,
about to say,
yeah,
yeah, American Communist Party freaks. Yeah.
yeah. Like I've definitely
Yeah.
seen a lot of that from both Russia and Ukraine, so it's kind of
Hmm.
like it is a bit hard, especially with the language barrier, to really kind of, like figure out exactly what's going on sometimes. But yeah, so it is a tricky one. So
Mm.
yeah, so next week they've got these meetings in Alaska. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
I do think that there probably ultimately will be some kind of land concessions. But yeah, I mean, yeah, at the end of the day, like I said, there's worse things to lose than land when you're like a living people. Like I know this is
Yeah.
coming from a person who's, like a lot of my family's land, what, we were dispossessed and all this kind of stuff historically. And I think that like, like I know that there are plenty of iwi and hapu that did make the call that they were like, we have to like our people paramount, we have to save these lives over, exactly where we're sitting right now. So yeah, hopefully it's resolved soon. But we will obviously stay tuned to what happens, and then,
Yes.
in any potential aftermath, what happens from there.
Absolutely. And
Mm.
just a final bit of breaking news. So this was announced just after the show started, but Defend Our Juries is reporting that every single actionist yesterday sorry, I shouldn't call them actionists, every single protester who was arrested yesterday in the Defend Our Juries mass civil disobedience protest against the prescription of Palestine action. Every single one of them has been released with no charges. The last person to be released was a Palestinian man who spent almost an entire day in custody. You couldn't make it up. But again, no charges. So this is a
Yeah.
significant situation here whereby people challenging the law are actually seeing that the law is unenforceable, proving that the law is unenforceable. Think about it. If 560 people, or however many people it was, we were reporting 466, there's been a bit of like a confusion about the numbers and how many people were actually arrested.
Yeah.
Some people were arrested because the cops tried to goad them into fighting, and they threatened and said, oh, you're fighting police and stuff like that. So 571 apparently, that are more arrests than from the 1990 poll tax riots in the UK, which is crazy. But every single one of them has been released with no charges. Incredibly good. You can't police something like this. It's insane. And again, I think it's another example to point to when we think about the upcoming anti-trans laws in the UK. Like, if enough of us stand up, it will change. We will prove that it is simply unenforceable. So I think that we absolutely have to be thinking about that going forward. But that is all we've got as a show today. Me and Tim just doing a news roundup for you this week. So thank you so much. Obviously, no main segment, but thank you mostly to our patrons. Please head over to patreon.com/red_planet and support us monetarily. This show is only possible through the money that we get through Patreon. So please head over there. There are a bunch of different tiers that you can get some really, really cool benefits from by joining. You can get some pin badges, you could get some stickers, you could get access to our bonus content. Me and Tim, as we alluded to at the start of the episode, we did a bonus episode where we were talking about left-wing video gaming and how it feels to play video games as a leftist, and shit like that.
We should actually we should do another one of those.
I'm so down.
Yeah, because I feel like there's been a couple of things I've been playing lately, and obviously, we talk about Oddworld and Abe's Odyssey and stuff. So,
Yeah.
Maybe we should do another one with Soph, maybe.
Yeah, fully down. So please head to our Patreon and support us. There is also our merch, which I am currently modeling. If you are visually looking at the stream, please check out mercenarycreative.com and check out our Queer Existence is Resistance t-shirts, hoodies, and tote bags. You can get them all designed by the wonderful Tim and the wonderful Sophie.
Yeah, Soph did a little Photoshop mock-up, and then I just kind of drew over the top and
you went sicko mode.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of what I do every day. People bring me their little sketches for their tattoos.
Listen, stop being modest. Your art is great and fantastic, and we love you for it. So that is that. And then at the very highest tier of our Patreon support, you get a thank you at the end of every show. And thank you once again to Risk Inverse, our one and only sicko. Thank you so much for supporting our show and giving us so much money. We really, really appreciate you. So yes, head over to patreon.com/red_planet. But if I wanted to support my boy Tim, where would I go?
So yeah, you can find me on Twitter and Blue Sky as Dread Conquest, but you can find me on YouTube and Twitch as Conquest of Dread. And I don't do much streaming or video essays or anything like that anymore. I'm sorry. I've kind of shifted focus, but I do. I have been working on for a while, and I mentioned this at the end of every stream. We've been working on a tabletop RPG, and just it just happens that yesterday I just printed out one of the most well. I just got like a quick print of one of the most recent playtest. Yeah, actually, the most recent play test version. Which is like this is how thick it is. It's like wild. Like look
There
how
is so
solid that
much.
is. But
It's easily almost an
it's like
inch thick.
yeah, it's like 200 pages and it's like all like fully illustrated. It's kind of like this like
Oh, it's
dark
great.
future dystopian anti-corporate RPG. So, you know, RPGs, if you don't know, like kind of Dungeons and Dragons kind of thing, except no Dungeons and Dragons here. Well, actually, no, I mean, there could. It's, you know, like
You can
corporate
get creative with
dystopia.
it.
Yeah. It's about like working class people that are kind of, you know, under the heel of these gigantic mega corporations. You know, kind of yeah, like I don't know, like 2000 AD kind of Judge Dredd style, except you know, you're just like these little people that are trying to survive. And there's also all kinds of like weird science fiction fantasy kind of stuff merged in there and stuff. It's a lot of fun and it's almost done. So if you want to check out that on Twitter, I've got a Twitter account, Dark RPG 2000, where you can keep up with updates. We're going to do a Kickstarter soon, though, just kind of like figuring out all the last stuff. And yeah, it's really good. All the playtests so far have been really great. Been fine tuning it, and it's really just in that those fine tuning stages where changing like you know, like some mathematical equations and which dice are used for which and all that kind of stuff. But maybe once I don't know, maybe sometime we'll do like a Red Planet stream of it or something and we can introduce Mule to the world of the RPG. But but speaking of Mule, if we want to hear more from Mule, where can we do that?
Thank you, Tim. You can head over to YouTube, youtube.com/ at DJMUEL. I believe that is the correct way to do YouTube links at the minute. But yeah, honestly, incredible stuff. I have made a new video, which is Bastard Landlord Influencers 2. It's on a horrible little goblin man. Goblin, not in the good way, even remotely. He is just one of the worst people ever. And also, he's racist. So that's fun, isn't it, for everyone? You could go and see me tearing him a new arsehole verbally and intellectually over on my YouTube channel. Just check out Awful Landlord Influencers 2, Kevin McDonnell. That's titled like that because obviously if I call it Bastard Landlord Influencers on YouTube, they might slap me down. But yeah, go and check that out. I'm really happy with the video. Everyone who's watched it thinks it's really good. There's a little bit of a bonus at the end that you might not be expecting. Yeah, it ends with some good news. So that is a very, very, very good bit of content that I've done recently, if I do say so myself. My streams are back on Monday to Thursday, 7 p.m. UK time till late, twitch.tv/DJMUEL. Head over there. And most importantly, you can check me out on Patreon, which is patreon.com/DJMUEL. There's a load of bonus content on there, movie reviews, some writing that I've been doing, and you can get bonuses, various different tiers, just like the Red Planet one. But speaking of Patreon and supporting people, please support our missing host, Sophie from Mars. It would mean the world to her. Go to patreon.com/Sophie from Mars, all one word, and support her there, and go over to her YouTube. Don't forget to support her on YouTube and watch her videos because they're really, really good. But we don't have a show next week. We're having a week off, so we will see you not next week, but the week after. Maybe there'll be a guest. I don't know. Join the Patreon, then you can get in the Discord and find out. We'll see you next time.
All right, see you next week.
See ya.